Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports with another 2022 NBA Draft focused video. And this one is another one that has been requested on the channel and one I'm really excited to cover. And it's covering the 2022 NBA Draft sleepers, which I think is always a great thing to talk about this time of year because everyone wants to know which player can my team potentially steal, maybe in the back end of the first round or deep into the second round of the NBA Draft, because those are the types of players that could really help change the culture of a franchise, improve the depth, and just overall improve the quality of play for an entire team. So it's really worth covering. I've got a ton of fun prospects that I think are worth talking about in today's sleeper video. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe for more NBA draft content. Now let's get into it here with this video request by Brady, Apollo, Eric, and Gerald. Thank you guys for the comment. And I want you guys to also comment your new video requests down in the comment section. Not only those four, but if you guys have any ideas yourself, I would love to hear them in the comment section right now. Give me a few awesome ideas to record videos for and maybe even get your name here on the channel at Utility Sports. Now let's jump into it with the video preview. We're going to be covering the 2022 NBA draft sleepers. And what are sleepers? Well, sleepers are draft prospects that I think will be good value selections, mostly second round picks, but maybe a back end first round prospect or two that I'm going to put in here as well, because I do think there's a few guys that are going to go in the back end of the first that are going to be really nice value additions, kind of like how Jordan Poole was for the Golden State Warriors. Maybe not quite as much upside as he's really played into, but definitely some good value selections from picks around 25 to 58, because of course this year there's only 58 draft selections because of tampering. Now let's go ahead and jump into prospect number one. I've got Dalen Terry here from Arizona. You know, on the channel there's been a lot of coverage about Christian Koloko and specifically Ben Mathurin from the University of Arizona, but Dalen Terry is not lost in the shuffle, at least here on the channel. I really do like this kid a lot. He played a lot of point guard for the Arizona Wildcats this past year, and in his sophomore season took a massive jump as an overall player, specifically with the responsibility he carried for that team, the role he played offensively and defensively for him. And when you look at just the physicals as a point guard, it's really easy to fall in love with a player like this. 6'7" in shoes. He's got a little bit of over a 7-foot wingspan, an 8'10" standing reach, which is pretty incredible for the guard position. And at 195 pounds, he's a little thin and wiry right now, but I have no concerns about that long term, just given the way that he plays. I even look at the graphic on the screen. His arms go on for days. I can hear Jay Billis saying it now on draft night because that's his favorite line to go to once you get past pick 7 in the NBA draft. But ultimately here for Dalen Terry, for me, when you look at this kid, I think there's going to be pretty good upside for him long term. A player I kind of liken him to, there's actually two, both of them play for the Los Angeles Clippers. You could look at a guy like Terrence Mann, or maybe a guy like Amir Coffey, who actually went undrafted out of the University of Minnesota. But both of them were bigger guards who had pretty good length and wingspans and defensive versatility. And kind of like Dalen Terry, both of them need to grow as a three-point shooter. That's really Dalen Terry's bugaboo right now. How good is he going to be offensively in terms of consistency behind the three-point line? But ultimately, I think he's a hard worker. I think he's going to be someone who comes in and gets better each and every year. And maybe by year 2 or 3 of his career, we start to see way more Dalen Terry run in an NBA offense, specifically with his ability to handle the ball and also bring good defensive presence, not only with his ball pressure, but also his ability to impact passing lanes. I think he's going to also be able to average half a block a game or so, which is actually a pretty substantial number for a guard. So I think Dalen Terry, pretty good pickup here in round 2. I would be surprised if he goes in round 1, but a little bit of a disclaimer. As of right now, the day I'm recording this, I do have him as a top 30 player in the class. Then we move on to prospect number 2 here that I want to talk about, and that's Johnny Giuseng. And the note I have written for him is pro ready score. He's really good on all 3 levels, specifically the mid-range. That's where he's really comfortable. And I think one thing that Johnny Giuseng does really well that a lot of people don't really talk about is his ability to shoot balanced and with his feet set toward the rim squared. And I think those are 2 really big things that allow consistency coming from a collegiate level to the NBA level. And I think Johnny Giuseng is prepared to make that step up to the NBA. Now, do I think he's going to become an all-star or a 20-point per game scorer? No, but I think maybe he could average 8 to 12 points a game off the bench for his career, which is pretty valuable. A lot of teams are looking for players like that on the wing that can have a slight but important impact. And I think Johnny Giuseng is going to play into that. He's not top 30 on my big board. And I think ultimately, you look at his athleticism, he is limited in certain ways for sure. But his overall skill set is there. I think he's going to be able to put the ball in the deck and put the ball in the hoop. And those are two really important things to look at for NBA draft prospects. He's very skilled already. And the fact that you have an option here of finding a player like him in the second round, perhaps even late in the second round, could be a really great value addition for a team, because I think he has a nice long career. I think he plays fairly well in the NBA. And ultimately, Johnny Giuseng probably going to score a lot of buckets at the next level. Prospect number 3, I've got John Butler here out of Florida State. And he's a player who I think a lot of people are divided on. Some people, I'm sure, are pretty afraid of his frailty. He is very, very slim, pretty much skin and bones at this point, at 175 pounds with almost a 7'1" standing height and shoes and nearly a 7'3" wingspan. He's very long, lengthy, and light. So the triple L there for John Butler, but he played pretty well this past year for Florida State, and anyone who watches any Florida State Seminoles knows how important to Leonard Hamilton the defensive side of the game is, specifically when it comes to length, athleticism, rim protection, and the ability to create havoc. And I think John Butler does all of those things. If you're a Toronto Raptors fan right now, circle John Butler about 25 times, because this is a player who's probably going to end up playing for the Toronto Raptors. They love players like him. Leonard Hamilton loves players like him. It's no surprise he played at Florida State, and his ability to create havoc on the defensive side of the ball is going to be important. And on relatively low volume this past year, just a little bit over 2 3-point shots a game, shot 39% from 3 at the collegiate level. So there's hope here that maybe he can play pretty good offensively in a designed role where he's going to stand in the corner and hopefully knock down open jump shots. He's not as consistent as you would like him to be yet at that point. I think that 39% is a little rich in comparison to a guy like Chet Holmgren, who shot 39%, not the same volume, not the same degree of difficulty, not the same type of looks. But ultimately here for me with John Butler, I think he's someone who's going to have a decent role long-term in the NBA, and definitely someone I would qualify as a sleeper. He's right on the cusp of being a top 30 player in my eyes. I've kind of wavered back and forth on him a little bit, and I think ultimately that size and length might keep him in my top 30, because I look at him and I say, this could be a really nice defensive weapon. Even if he's not a great on-ball defender one-on-one, I think that there's enough length here where if you play him at the 4, he probably creates some disruption around the rim, gets in the passing lanes enough where teams have to adjust playing to a guy like that, who's 7 foot tall, can move like a wing, and can also protect the rim fairly well with good athleticism. So ultimately for me, John Butler, definitely a player to watch for in the second round. I would be shocked if he goes in the first round, but you never really know. Maybe a team will surprise me. Prospect number 4 is Maika Kamagate here, a guy who I think probably goes in the back end of the first round now. He's starting to pick up some steam. I feel like I've been right on it with him here. He's been in the first round of my mock drafts fairly consistently as of late. And at 6'11", he's more of a project piece, but I think there's some real things you can tap into here. I think he's a very smart defensive player. He's had some monstrous performances overseas, including 8, 9, 10 block performances, which is really tough to do. It's tough to be that dominant at any level, and he's been doing that overseas. And I think bringing him into the NBA, he's going to adjust rather well, because he's a smart defender with his positioning IQ and his ability to challenge shots vertically without fouling. And I think that's a huge thing when coming to the NBA. A lot of guys struggle, especially as young guys, with fouling too frequently because they lose their verticality and they oftentimes create contact, they lower their arms, and it makes it an easy call for the official. I think that Ismail Kamagate does a great job challenging vertically, staying upright, and then using his arms as deterrents around the rim. And I think ultimately, when you look at a guy like Kamagate, whose offensive game is coming around, there's moments where he does knock down moving jump shots or a little bit of a standstill catch and shoot opportunity. He has to grow yet, but the defense is going to translate. The offense maybe comes around. I think he could be a pretty nice find as well, either in the beginning part of round 2 or the back end of round 1, like I think he's going to go. Prospect 5 here, no surprise to see this guy on my list if you've been following the channel. Hugo Bazan from the New Zealand Breakers. 6'5" guard. He had a great combine. He's one of the more talented players in the class. I have him relatively high on my big board because I think he's just a good player. When you look at a player like him, it's hard to find someone who can be a sniper from behind the arc, who can also put the ball on the deck, create for others, create for himself, and has a really good flair for making high-level reads, high-level plays. I think he really dominated the combine with his ability to pass the basketball, which I wasn't necessarily even expecting from him, even though I've been high on him. He had moments for New Zealand where he was playing point guard, but he kind of operated more as a combo guard. And at the combine, where usually guards are a little bit more rare, you tend to have less point guards on the floor. Bazan had to step up in that role, and he actually played phenomenally doing so. I think he was a really nice floor general in that setting, which can be a hard ask because you're playing with guys for the first ever time of your career, but he hit a ton of nice passes in the pick and roll game, kept the offense moving and flowing, and I think honestly was one of the bigger winners of the NBA draft combine in general. And I think if ultimately he can ever figure out the defensive side of the ball, which I think he probably can with the right coaching. Right now his footwork is terrible on that end, but if you lock him in and you say, hey, if you want to get serious NBA minutes, you're going to have to get better on this end of the floor and really work on him with it. And this is what the importance of development is. If Bazan develops as a defender just a hair, he becomes a really, really nice grab as a player who probably goes around pick 20 or later, whether he's in the first round, maybe top into the second. I think he's well worth a first round pick. And I think he should go in round one, but ultimately maybe he goes as low as like say 35 or 40. But ultimately for me, Bazan, another player who I think is going to be a nice sleeper in this year's draft that I've been ringing the bell on, trying to wake everyone up. We'll see if they did wake up though in time of the NBA draft. Then prospect number 6, Jalen Williams here out of Arkansas, who measured in at 6'10" at the combine with a 7'1" wingspan and 235 pounds. So he's got decent size for the position, not great by any stretch, but definitely solid enough where he's going to be able to get the job done. And I think the biggest thing that stands out when you watch Jalen Williams is how quickly he thinks the game and how smart of an overall player he is. And for those who haven't watched him, what I mean by that is he's constantly in the right position, but in a different way from what Maika Kamagate is, who I talked about earlier. Jalen Williams is not much of a rim protector, but he's more so of a great team defender because of his ability to take charges, which you typically do not see from the center position, but it's actually devastatingly deadly with his ability to be in the right position. All of a sudden they're trying to fit a little squeeze pass into a roll man, and he's there and takes it right in the chest and falls over. You get a huge charge call going back the other way. He's what you call an energizer. And I think Jalen Williams is going to have a massive impact on a team, even in low minutes, because I think when he's in the game, he's going to do what the coach wants him to do. Oh, and by the way, he steps out behind the three-point line pretty well. He can play make a little bit. I think there's room for him to grow in that regard. He's not going to be a go-to scorer. He's going to be complimentary on that end of the floor. But defensively, that's why you're drafting him, because he's smart, heads-up guy, can play the 4 or 5, I would think, defensively at the NBA level. He's got decent mobility to him. There's definitely a need to grow here a little bit, but Jalen Williams, I think, is another really good sleeper that I have identified in this class that, if he went in the back end of round 1, I wouldn't be absolutely shocked, but more so I think he's probably an early round 2 selection. Then prospect 7 here, back to a guy who maybe goes in the back end of the first round, but also if he goes in the second round, probably the biggest steal of the draft here in Harper Jr. out of Rutgers. This is the type of player everyone's looking for. Last year I said it about Herb Jones. This year I'm saying about Harper Jr. 6'5.5", so decent, not great size, but a 7'1" and a quarter wingspan. That is a huge differential. He had one of the biggest differentials from height to wingspan in the entire class. He's the son of a former 5-time NBA champion, so he knows how the NBA works. Oh, and by the way, as a wing, he's 240 pounds, which means he's going to be very versatile. He's got great footwork and technique. I talked about how Hugo Bazan needs to get coached up on that end of the floor. I mean, if Bazan and Harper Jr. ended up on the same team, Harper Jr. could be the guy that coaches him up. That's how sound he is with his footwork and technique. He's one of the most smooth defensive players I've ever evaluated. I really do believe that. He's not as much of a playmaker on that end like a guy like Herb Jones was last year, or maybe what we'll see from players like Jalen Duren or Jeremy Sohan in this class, but he's really, really sound, and he's going to be in the right position as a perimeter defender, and he's got enough strength and toughness and grit where you're going to be able to put him on some 4s, maybe even some 5s, which it sounds a little crazy, but at 240 pounds, He's strong, he's built, he's going to be able to hold his own, and he's actually a better athlete than people give him credit for. And honestly, on draft night, I think a lot of talent evaluators and GMs and executives kind of lose their mind because they look at players and try and project, will this guy be good at basketball, without just simply looking at him and say, wow, this guy is just flat out good at basketball. Ron Harper Jr. fits that category for me. I talk about him like he's the Jalen Brunson from a few years ago, who was an absolute steal for the Mavericks out of Villanova. Ron Harper Jr. out of Rutgers, he's a steal. This is a draft sleeper, a massive one. I've been trying to ring the bell again all year long. I think he probably goes in round 1. I would be really shocked if he doesn't, with just how sound and good of a prospect he is. I really think he should be a lock for round 1. But, you know, in times before, guys like Jalen Brunson and so fall into the second round. If he goes in the second round, it's a huge steal. Back into the round 1, I still think another big time steal for a team, especially one that's looking for a championship. I mean, if the Memphis Grizzlies get him, watch out. That's just the team that just jumped into my mind here now, because they'll be looking for wing replacements for Kyle Anderson. And I mean, Ron Harper Jr. does everything you want him to do and more. Then prospect 8, and this is going to be one of the most popular ones here. So if you guys are a big fan of Kai Sotto, make sure to leave a like on the video and also subscribe. And the reason why I think Kai Sotto is a pretty interesting draft sleeper here, well, there's a few reasons. First of all, if you're a GM and you want to, maybe win your owner over a little bit and the people who pay the bills, you draft Kai Sotto in round 2 because he's a money maker. People in the Philippines really do love this kid. They really look at him as the guy. They want him to succeed. And I've seen a lot of passion, a lot of love in the comment section, even about Kai Sotto. And it's deserved. He is a very talented big man who has passing skills, and he's succeeded in the NBL playing for the Adelaide 36ers. He's played only about 15 minutes a game. He's not the best athlete. That's really the biggest knock on him. He's not super athletic. He's not great laterally with mobility on the defensive end of the floor. But offensively, he's special. There's some serious upside here. He's ambidextrous-esque. And honestly, in some regards, kind of reminds you of what Chet Holmgren is offensively with what he's capable of doing. He shoots the ball left-handed, but very comfortable putting the ball on the deck with his right as well, with his ambidextrous nature. And then you look at his upside as a shooter, and he can step out behind the three-point line, knock it down. He shoots free throws at a pretty decent clip as well. So Kai Sotto, another player to watch for as a draft sleeper. And again, he's going to be a big-time money investment. They're going to sell a ton of Kai Sotto jerseys in the Philippines. Everyone's going to want a Kai Sotto jersey for the team that drafts him or ultimately signs him if he goes undrafted. But I think he's a pretty nice draft sleeper here, who, if he gets picked up, adds some serious value, not only on the court, but also to the owner's pocket. Thank you guys for watching so much. Hopefully you did enjoy today's Draft Sleepers video. Again, trying to cover as much of the 2022 NBA draft as possible. Leave your ideas in the comment section down below if there's any specific videos you'd like to see. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.